We'll do a review in Likutei Sichas in Chelek Yudches. This is the third sicha of Parshas Naso. It's a very long sicha and a complicated sicha. It's also a siyum of Maseches Nazir. The Rebbe discusses a lot that in addition to the regular Naziris that we find, which is either a person takes on Naziris for a certain amount of time, for 30 days or 60 days, whatever time he puts a frame on how long he's going to be a Nazir. And then we have a Nazir Olam. We have a Nazir for all of his life. And a Nazir Olam has certain, in a way, he's a Nazir forever, but once a year, he's allowed to cut his hair. But on the top of that, we find in the Nevi'im, Ksuvim, the Gemara brings down two more Naziris. We find Naziris of Shimshon, that when he was born, the Malach was telling the parents that he should be a Nazir and Moira Loyala al Reisha. So he was sort of, what exactly was his status? This is all going to be the discussion in this Sicha. And also we find by Shmuel. Shmuel says his mother, when she prayed in Shmuel Aleph, she said also that she's going to give him to Hashem. That seems also a Naziris. And what kind of is the status of Naziris is that? It's going to involve a lot of laws of Naziris. The Rebbe is Mechadish. This whole issue, how was the Navi or the mother, how was the Navi able to make him into a Nazir? How was the mother, Shmuel's mother, Chana, able to make him to a Nazir? They didn't accept it. How does that work? The Rebbe brings an example from a ger who was Megaya when he's a cotton, and then he can later on protest, but if he doesn't, it is chalosh from the beginning. Even with a regular ger, an adult, if he hasn't used the mikveh yet and just had the bris milah, he can still retract. It's something which later on establishes the past. It also worked like that with Shimshon, and it worked like that with Shmuel, even though they had different categories of Naziris, Shimshon and Shmuel, as the Rebbe will discuss over here, but yet that was established later on. That also answers the connection to Gemara. In Nazir seems to be the Gemara bringing down cases about what is greater, the one who makes the bracha or the one who says Amen. And the Rebbe is going to point out that there's a Chelek between Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Nahiroi, and a very big arichas. We'll go step by step. We'll learn this Lilo Nishmas, Harav Achosid, Rav Atomim, Harav Menachem Mendel ben Meir Yaakov, Nikta Bidmei Yomov is still in the Shloishim Shaloi, and also for Refuah Shlema for Golda Rechel Bas Soren Naomi. Look inside. Ois Aleph, Nosei, Ois Aleph, Nosei Gimel, Ois Aleph, and the Siyum Sech another. By the dinim funa Nazir beParshasenu, by the laws of the Nazir in our portion. So the pasuk talks about the specific laws. Is as a torni trinken kein wine. He is not allowed to drink wine, and also vitar lo yaver al roshay, and a blade, a shaving blade, shall not pass over his head. Basically, he is not allowed to cut his hair during the Naziris. But then the pasuk goes on and also says, "Kol yemei haziroi laHashem al nefesh meis lo yavei." The older days that he was separated, a Nazir for Hashem, he is also not allowed to come in contact with a body, nefesh meis. He can't come. And then we have, so this is basically the three main aspects that in the pasuk it talks about the not drinking wine, and it talks about not taking haircuts, and it also talks, a third thing is about not coming in contact with the body. And we'll see that Shimshon only had two of them. We'll see in a minute. There's further pratim in the pasuk, which the Rebbe brings down the parentheses. That is the shaving of the head. On the karbonis that happens at the end of the nizirus. That he brings if in the middle he's not allowed to touch a nefesh mace. What happens if accidentally? So then he will have to he has to cut his hair and bring the karbonis and start counting again. So 11th man up. So we learn as a gayin on that these rules will apply both by a nazir whether he is a nazir for a set time, accepted for a certain time, 30 days or more. Sai by a nazir olam, and it also applies to if someone becomes a nazir for the rest of his life, a nazir outstanding, a nazir on for always. But now there is a difference between a nazir olam and a nazir for a certain amount of time. A nazir olam is allowed to take a haircut once a year. The chiluk zwischen zei, the only difference between a nazir for a timely, for a time period, or forever, is not as a nazir if a bashtimten zman, that when you're a nazir for a set time, so he's not allowed to shave until the end of the days that he separated himself. He's a nazir to Hashem until the end. He can't cut his hair. But una nazir olam. But if you have a nazir which is forever, is the din is ich megaleach bring the karbones was kumen kshiyiglach. So he does shave, and he also brings the karbonis that come along when he shaves. Then when his hair becomes heavy. So nazir olam doesn't mean that he cannot cut his hair. However, when the hair gets heavy, which is once in 12 months. So these are the main categories, which are the regular categories that the pasuk and the Torah talks about. But there is another category in Nazirus, but it's not meforish in the Torah. That's not explicit. Torah doesn't talk about it openly. That you find in the Nevi'im, and that's in the Haftorah for the Sedra, in the Haftorah of the Sedra of Parshas Nazir. We call it the Nazir Shimshon, the fact that Shimshon was a Nazir. Those are the Shimshon Nazir. So over there, by Shimshon state, by Shimshon it says, Umoira loyala al roshei, so that a hair cutting, the metal that cuts the hair, the blade, shall not go on his head. And the verse states there, that's what the Malach that met up with Manoach and his wife, he told him that she'll have a son, but a blade shall not go up on his head. In his Nazir Elikim that this child, from the time that he's born, from the beta, from the mother's womb, he will be a Nazir for Elikim, for Hashem. So while Oich is a Nazir Olam, he is also a eternal, a Nazir forever, but yet he doesn't have all the laws of Naziris. Before we said one of the laws is that not being metame to Mesim, but ermeg, because he is permitted. And the fact was that Shimshon was defiled himself to the Mesim. He's allowed to. And there's also other lochas and anders by Nazir Shimshon Kidlakamon that will be different by the Nazir Shimshon, as we will discuss. And therefore, because this is a whole new category, if one says, I am a Nazir like Shimshon, so is Ledas, Rabbi Yehuda, Unazoi Paskun the Rambam, according to the view of Rabbi Yehuda, and that's also the way the Rambam rules, is an osur beyain ubetaglachas. He is prohibited drinking wine and taking haircuts because that was what Shimshon was osurin. But however, he is permitted to be mitamed to mesim. So the law of tamel mesim does not apply to him. Now we're going to bring down the last Mishnah of Nazir. In the Mishnah for Siyum Masechta Nazir Lanen, we learn in the last Mishnah that finishes the tractate Nazir. Over there it says, Nazir Hoya Shmuel, that Shmuel was also a Nazir. Kedivre Rab Naroi, this is the opinion of Rabbi Naroi. Shenemar, because the Pasuk says that when Chana says she's going to give him to Hashem, and she says, Umoira lo yala al Rosha. What does it mean? Moira will not go upon his head. So Rabbi Nehoiroi learns, and he says, just like Nemar b'Shimshon, Umoira, by Shimshon it says, Umoira. And by Shmuel, Nemar b'Shmuel, and by Shmuel it says Umoira. So by both they say Umoira. By Shimshon it says Umoira lo yala al Rosha. And here also says, so ma moira ha'amura b'Shimshon, but over there by Shimshon it's not. The pasuk says moira lo yala al Rosha ki nazir lekimu, because over there it says he was a nazir. The pasuk says b'feidish. Af moira ha'amura b'Shmuel. So also the moira which is written by Shmuel is nazir, also nazir. Rabbi Yossi disagrees with Rabbi Nehoiroi. Amar Rabbi Yossi said the translation of the pasuk over there is not umoira, meaning a blade, a cutting machine, cutting the hair. Moira means no fear. Loshen moira, from like with an aleph. Moira. That he says moira means of a human being. Umoira layala al Rosha means on his head will be no fear. But it's nothing to do with Naziris. That's the opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Amar le Rabbi Nehoiroi, says to Rabbi Nehoiroi, what do you mean that he's not going to be afraid that Shmuel, when it says Umoira layala al Rosha, means he's not going to be afraid of anybody? We find that Shmuel was afraid that Shaul is going to kill him. What does it mean he's not going to be afraid? So Amar le Rabbi Nehoiroi, but the pasuk it states, Shmuel says, how can I go and tell Shaul that he's no longer a king? Shaul will hear about a guy and he'll kill me. So you see clearly that he had upon him the fear of a human being. So Rabbi Nehoiroi argues to Rabbi Yossi, you can't say that the pshat of Umoira lo yala al Rosha, that he's not gonna fear anybody because he did fear. So therefore, the Nehoiroi says, Moira means a haircutting machine or a haircutting, the Moira, the blade, is not going to pass his head, which means that he was a Nazir. That's the machlokes in the Mishnah. According to the Nehoiroi, you would almost think that Shmuel was at the same level as Shimshon, because we learned it out of Gezeirah Shavah. Gezeirah Shavah is full. Move from them was Rabbi Nehoiroi learned up as Shmuel is given a Nazir, the Gezeirah Shavah from Shimshon. And the fact that he learns it with a Gezeirah Shavah from Shimshon. Since we say as ein Gezeirah Shavah lemechza, you can't have a half a Gezeirah. If you learn it, a Gezeirah Shavah, that means that it's totally equal to the case of Shimshon. Daf oiskumen, so it should turn out as ledas Rabbi Nehoiroi, according to Rabbi Nehoiroi, is Shmuel given a Nazir, that Shmuel was a Nazir in themselves, sug v'oifen b'Shimshon. That it should be in the same category, the same way as Shimshon. According to what we learned before, Shimshon was mutter to be metame b'meisim. So if we're learning Umoira from Shimshon, that means that Shmuel was in the same category as Shimshon. he was also permitted to be Mitame Lemesim, and not in the other category. We learned to Olam, someone who is for always Nazir Olam, is also prohibited to be Mitame Lemesim. Paskin over the Rambam, but the Rambam, however, rules Ashmul Haramosi Nazir Olam Hoyer. He was a Nazir Olam. Thus haste, what it means to say, he had all the laws of Naziris, which means he wouldn't be allowed to be Metamel Lemesim. Bos wie gesagt, is Nazir Olam also Letamel Lemesim, number one. You're not allowed to be Metamel Lemesim, unlike Shimshon, which was Metamel Lemesim, was allowed to, and he was. And the other thing is Hirbit Sarei is a Mekel Betar, that if he here becomes heavy, so then he can lighten himself by using the tar. We said once in 12 months. Unabring shalish behemoths. Every time that he shaves, he has to bring the 3 behemoths that are designated for a Nazir Olam. Once he shaves, he has to bring the karbanos. And then there's another issue when there can shoyel zayin of zayin, and he has a right to ask and get his nether absolved from the Nazir Olam. That's a Nazir Olam can do that. Aber Nazir Shimshon, but the Nazir Shimshon, first of all, is mutter letamim lemesim. He is allowed to be letamim lemesim, and hirvid sayrei einay mekel. And by Shimshon, even if the here in his category, that was the Rebbe hinted before, there was other halachas that apply to Shimshon. If his here gets heavy, he cannot make it lighter by shaving, by cutting his hair. And also ve'enu b'shayla. And he's also not in the category of questioning and absolving himself by going to a chacham and asking to absolve the Naziris. So if we're learning, the Mishnah says that we're learning the Naziris from Shmuel, from the Naziris of Shimshon, why is there these chilukim? Shmuel, the Rambam rules, had the regular din of Nazir Olam, which has these halachas, which are not the same by Shimshon. Nochmer. Furthermore, in Yerushalmi lernt man oft von Posik. In the Yerushalmi, you learn from the verse. It says, "Kein yase al toiras nizrei," that this is what needs to be done for the rule of a Nazir. So it says in Yerushalmi, this is only done when there is a toiras nizrei, when there is a Nazir min ha-Torah, like the Nazir Olam or the Nazir for the time. And the Yerushalmi says, Nazir is Shimshon ain't a Torah. That's not min ha-Torah. That's not the Torah's Nazir. And the Rambam paskins as Shimshon lahoya Nazir goma, that it wasn't a complete Nazir. And here we're saying that Shmuel was a complete Nazir, even though we learned Shmuel from Gzeir Shavah from Shimshon. So Shimshon was not a Nazir, and here we're learning Shmuel from Shimshon, and Shmuel is a full Nazir. Is we learned enough for Shimshon and Nazir Olam, so how could you learn from Shimshon? A Nazir Olam of Shmuel was called in Naziris Olav. He has all laws of Naziris. So the question is, since we're learning Shmuel from Shimshon, Shimshon himself was not really a complete Nazir. He wasn't a Nazir min ha-Torah, and it doesn't apply to him the laws. And Shmuel we learned from him, and the Rambam passed that he's a Nazir. But after the Mefarshim, so Mefarshim want to say that it's not a Gzeir Shavah. But the limit for Shimshon is not Gzeir Shavah. That we learn from Shimshon is not a Gzeir Shavah, nor Agilui Milsa Ba'alma. We're just trying to reveal this matter. That's all we're trying to do over here. Which means, what are we trying to prove? As Moira is an Inyan for Naziris. By Shimshon. Since we have the opinion of Rabbi Yehuda, the opinion of Rabbi Yossi, that it doesn't mean really Shimshon was a Nazir, but Shimshon means Nid Vidas Rabbi Yossi as made Yira. So the question really here is, what exactly does the pasuk mean? Umoira loyala al Rosh, that it says by Shmuel. So since Rabbi Yossi says that it means Yira, that no fear, it won't have any fear. So we're proving that from Moira loyala doesn't mean fear, it means a blade, but we're not taking Xer Shava. As Moira is an input Ziris from Bashimsha. From them is Bemela Farstatik. So therefore we already understand. As Ima Shel Shmuel, that the mother of Shmuel meant to make for a Nazir Koy, she wanted to make him for a Nazir Olam for all of his life. But it's not Xer Shava, it's not the same as the Naziris by Shimshon. But the Rebbe says of a Loshna Mishnah, but the language the Mishnah uses, it says by Shimshon Umoira and by Shmuel Umoira. And Ma Moira Hamura b'Shimshon Nazir, Af Moira Hamura b'Shmuel Nazir. This is the exact lashon. That just like there is Nazir too. This is a lashon was very ginuz b'chlal b'Gzeir Shava. This is usually used when you're making a Gzeir Shava, not a Gilu Milsa. Especially, the Rebbe says, if you see the language, in addition, main thing, the form was zokt, Ma Moira Chulu Nazir Chulu Nazir. This means Nazir, this is Nazir. If he's only what is trying to tell us the taich of the word moira, agilui milsa, so then he should have said that it means a blade, that it means a metal. It said moira is tar chulu. And also, and by saying, as he says, Nazir said moira shal matchis, or the shal naziris, should have said it's metal, it's of naziris. Is mashmas from this it appears ados is not agilu milsa from the taich from moira. It is not just merely revealing us what the meaning of moira means. That moira means a blade and not fear. We learn actually of the Naziris from Shmuel of Shimshon because of the Lashon over here. The question is, it seems like to be a different Naziris. Now I was going to ask 3 more questions. In the whole continuation of the Gemara over there, seems to be out of place. Himmel, so the Mishnah is the Gemara to follow the Mishnah. The Gemara says, Amalei Rav L'chia Berei. Rav said to his son Chia, Chatoifu Berach, grab and make the bracha. In other words, be quick to make the bracha. The brachas hamiz azimun, make the brachas azim. Chen Amalei Ravuna L'Rabba Berei, and Ravuna said to his son Rabba, Chatoifu Berei, Chaparain, quickly and make the bracha. So the Gemara says, "Lememra the mevarich adif." So shall we say that making the bracha is the better one? Because since you're telling him to go chap and make the bracha, that means that there's an advantage to that. But isn't the responding with amen to the bracha more important? Lememra the mevarich adif. Shall we say that making the bracha is advantageous? But Tanya, but then we learn Rabbi Yossi says, that it is greater the one who answers Amen more than the one that makes the bracha. So that's what Rabbi Yossi brings down over there in the Brisa. So why are we rushing to make a bracha, tell him to quickly chap the chance to make the bracha? Better for him, let somebody else make the bracha. Let him say Amen on the bracha. So Rabbi Narai concurs with Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Narai says, that I promised by the Shamayim, this is the lotion of a Shavua, this is true. And Teda, he says, I'll bring you a proof. Because you see, Gulayrim are the weaker ones. They are the one that tease. They are the one that rile up the other side in the war, but they can't win, they're weak. The Gebayrim Neitzchim, and the Gebayrim are victorious. So basically, to say the one who answers Amen, that's the Gebayrim, they're Neitzchim, and not the one who are Gulayrim, those are the ones that start up. So why do we say that he told him to chab the bracha first? Over there it says the Amen is better. And the Gemara answers Tanoi. This is actually the machlekes of Tanoi, the Tanya, because in a brayse and another brayse we learned echad ha-mevorich ve'echad ha-ine Amen b'mashma. Both are them. Whether you are the one that makes the bracha or you say Amen, you are understood to be very powerful. That's strong. But the blessing gets quicker. The one you get, the one who makes the actual bracha, he gets responded quicker than the one that says Amen. So here we see that making the bracha is greater according to that Tana, and that's what the Ameroim that were doing it quick were following that Tana. Is nicht verstandig, so it's not understood. Was ist der Sheiches v'hemshech von der Gemara to the Mishnah Masechta Nazir? So what is the connection, and what is the flow from this Gemara to the Mishnah Masechta Nazir? Das ist doch an Inyan in Brachas. That has to do in Brachas. Was is Shaich to Masechta Brachas? That's connected to Masechta Brachas. Und das wird Taki gebracht in Masechta Brachas, and that's actually brought down in Masechta Brachas. So, what is it brought down here? Forshim Zogun, as the Gemara will do bring noch a Maimer from Rabbi Nehoroi. The Mishnah branches Rabbi Nehoroi. So the Gemara wants to bring another statement for Rabbi Nehoroi. The Shaykh is with the Maimer. Rabbi Nehoroi has a connection with the Maimer Rabbi Nehoroi, was gebracht in der Mishnah. That is brought in the Mishnah. Those halachas that we learn from Rabbi Nehoroi are very few in the Talmud, in the Gemara. Frat, as in them inyam shebi Gemara, bringt sich euch Rabbi Yossi. Over here we're also saying Rabbi Nehoroi, we're Rabbi Yossi. In our Mishnah we had Rabbi Nehoroi and Rabbi Yossi. Azoi in the Mishnah, just like in the Mishnah. Es ist aber schwer, azoi zu lernen, but it's difficult to interpret and learn this way. Number one, Aleph, if that was the reason, the Gemara should start with the time the Brai said. The Gemara Hiptach on, this Gemara begins nit mit divrei Rabbi Yossi that says God l'hoina amen Yossi men hamevarech. More the greater is the one that has amen more than the one who makes the bracha. And that would be sort of bringing down another statement of Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Nehoroi. And then the Gemara could bring down the discussion of the Meroim that followed. We started here with the Rav saying Rav Chia Berei, so it seems like that should be the connection. Based, say the Gemara, but in the order of the Gemara, we'll try if the purpose is not Rav Nehoroi. But the Braise is with the mandom of the script of Rabbi Yossi, of Rabbi Nehoroi. Rabbi Yossi and Rabbi Nehoroi, they both say that the end is greater. They say that the end is greater, but the Gemara starts up with the statement that the beginning is greater. So that would be going against Rabbi Nehoroi, what we learned. So while basically because the way the Gemara brings it down, first, that it's better to make a bracha, chatif, that it would tell the bracha. So that goes against, why would you start? Not only aren't we starting with Rabbi Yossi and the Rabbi Nehoroi, but we're starting to say just the opposite than what they said. If the purpose is to bring another statement of Yosef of Nairoi. And Gimel, number 3, Bechlal, in the Mishnah, Zainen, Rab Nairoi and Rab Yosef Mechulak. They disagree in our Mishnah. Here we're bringing another statement in where, when the Gemara gives a beit to the Zelbashita, they go in the same view. Rab Yosef says that the one who ends is greater, and he says, Halikim, he approves and he brings that ayta. So you're bringing from the Mishnah from something which is actually, they're saying together. All this doesn't seem like that would be the reason why the Gemara brings it. Nachmer is not moving the Sima Gemara, even more, it's not understood is the conclusion of the Gemara. Rabbi Chanina, Tamid Chachomim, Mar Misholem Ba'ilom. The blessed and Rabbi Chanina, Tamid Chachomim increase from the world. Shenamar, V'chol B'nayich Lemud Hashem, V'rav Shloim B'noich. That the children that are learned of Hashem and the Rav Shloim B'noich. So what is this? The Tamid Chachomim increase Sholem Ba'ilom. It says, "V'rashleim b'noich hados b'noich at increased sholem hadoch l'chayre nit kein shaychus." This doesn't have any connection. Nit to the Mishnah, nit to the Gemara, not to our Mishnah, not to the Gemara. Now, sometimes we say we just want to finish with something good. If the intent is to conclude with something good, that does dan haben and shaychus to me, and I should have some sort of a connection to the previous idea. And besides that, there's no need to finish with something good. Is that the item beforehand also concludes with something good? So why would we need this? Rebbe is going to come up with a whole entire chiddush over here, as we'll see. But first, the Rebbe is going to ask a few more questions in the language of the Gemara. Dalet. We should also need to understand several questions that in the language of the Gemara. Aleph. Was tut oif Rabbi Nairoi of Divrei Rabbi Yosef? In the Gemara, it seems like they're saying the same thing, and the Rebbe's answer, the Rebbe will explain that actually Rabbi Nairoi is different than what the Rabbi Yosef said. But the Rebbe in the Pashtus looks like Rabbi Nairoi is backing and seconding and concurring with Rabbi Yosef. So what does he accomplish when he says, God la'ina omen Yosef and Amavorech? So he's coming to tell us Rabbi Nairoi midam v'sezok hashamayim kachu. Hashamayim, which means b'shvua. I swear is that what is he adding? Umidaraya, what is he adding? He brings a proof. Teida. He brings a proof. Sharei Gulayirim Mizgarim b'Milchama v'Gebayrim Netzchim, because you see the Gulayirim, they start the war. It is the war, and it's the Gebayrim that are victorious. So why? What is Rabbi Nairoi adding really, and with his mashal over Rabbi Yosef? We'll see that is a big difference over here, as the Rabbi explains. Based become a mekomis in Shas. In many places in the Gemara was brings the memory from Rabbi Wolosow and Rabbi Chanina. Tamid Chacham Mar Misholem Ba'ilom Chulu is Mamesayim. Then we conclude Al Tikre Banoich Elo Boinoich. Don't call it your sons, but those builders. According to most of the versions, we don't find this. Okay, so now the Rebbe is going to start to explain this by first exploring how was Bechlal this Nezirus made by Shmuel through his mother. Let me understand all the above by first bringing out the question of the Rabdak. How did Shmuel turn into a Nazir? Again, we can't say that it is because the vow of his mother Chana. What does she say? That I will give him to Hashem for all the days of his life, and a moira blade shall not go up on his head. Can't say that. Vorum, number one, Aleph. Shmuel is doch damut noch nit given ba'olam. He wasn't yet in the world. He wasn't born yet. She said, if you will give me a child, then I will do that. But that's not the way to make a vow. Is there nadarafim itchal? And that's something which is not in the world, it does not rest upon him. By the way, the Naharas, there's a whole lumpus in all these details from the Mefarshim, but we're just going to be enough for us just to go through the sicha itself inside. Beis, and number two, even if Shmuel was born, is the nether from Chana nit bekoich to machen Shmuel and Varnozi. The vow that Chana made doesn't have the power to make Shmuel Varnozi. Vorum halacha, the halacha is, as a ish madir es benoi benozir, a father has the ability to make a vow and make his son a nazir. And a woman does not have the ability to make his son a nazir. Again, in the notes, in the ha'aras that Rebbe discusses, but in this case, since he was born due to the prayer of Shmuel, maybe she had the prayer of Chana, maybe some rights, but that's another discussion. Now, maybe Chana made the vow, and maybe we should say that there was other vows that are not recorded over here, which is the vow of Elkanah. Elkanah sustained it, but why would the Torah not write, tells us about the vow, which does not obligate Shmuel to become a Nazir, and it doesn't write about Elkanah, if Elkanah made Nazir. If we should say as Elkanah, that he also made the vow. We're going to say this took place after. The Farshim discussed this also, that after Shmuel already in the world. So maybe Elkanah made another. Is we come to how is come at the pasuk that said another Chana. The pasuk tells us about the vow that Chana made. Was it not gemacht Shmuel for a Nazir? That didn't make him to Nazir. When lost is the Mikah, Neder Elkanah, the Torah leaves out the main thing. What made him for a Navi is the Neder from Elkanah. Also, you can't say maybe he didn't make a separate vow, but because he didn't protest, or he sustained it. You cannot say as that her husband Elkanah he sustained her neder. Vorum, and that's also in the notes here. Here's another shaila. This is not Inu Nefesh. He doesn't have to sustain it. But let's say that he sustained it, and that's why it applied. It was as if he was Madir Ben Eder. But shaila, because the question remains, Ashmul is noch nit given ba'olam. He wasn't yet in the world. So it doesn't matter if he sustained it or not, but she could not have made him another. Okay, Mela, the second question, how could the woman make it, the mother make it? Okay, maybe it was Elkanah's. And further the Rebbe says, and so it wasn't Ba'olam. I feel and Shmuel, both Yaakov and Ba'olam, even if Shmuel was in the world at the time, still, isn't it move on? Those was their Baal is Mekayim, Neder Ishtoi. When a husband sustains the vow of his wife, is akim in them neder. That's sustaining the vow, not a new vow. That is mechayiv the madir. He obligates the one who made the vow, ishtoi, to mekayim them the neder by not protesting. He sustains it, so she has to fulfill the neder. How could this do now something new? We want his sustaining to make him son into a nazir. Was there neder? The vow that the wife made doesn't have. She could not make her son into a neder. And now because he sustained it, he made up a new neder. So she couldn't be made. So he sustained her what she couldn't do. That doesn't make him a neder. Even if he sustained it after he was born. So that's as far as Shmuel goes. We have a very similar question to Shimshon. How does Shimshon neder take place? Both. We can ask similarly with regards to Shimshon. The Rambam says Shimshon lo yehoya nazir gamur, that he was not a complete nazir. It's for them mashma. So from there it appears He wasn't a complete Nazir, as a Gad Kedushas Nizirus Zich. He did have a sanctity of Nizirus himself. It's not only Nitnora and Hoga for Nizirus. It's not only that he led a life as if he was a Nazir, which means that he didn't drink wine, he didn't cut his hair, but it's mashma, he wasn't a complete Nazir, but he was a Nazir. He wasn't a complete Nazir. So how did his nit move on? It's not understood. Since Shimshon himself did not vow to become a Nazir, it is only that the Malach separated him from the Tumah. How did this impact England at the Metzias from Chefzo, that the entity, the object, Shimshon, should become a not complete Nazir? Shimshon was not a Nazir. Not a complete Nazir. How does he become a Nazir? A Malach, an angel, a Shliach, can either get Matzivu, he can pass along a instruction, a mitzvah, like Hoga can tell you a mitzvah about how you should lead. A siddur, he can tell you future. Where do we find that a malach should be able to sanctify and put a kedusha on somebody? As in our case, to place naziris on a human being. And also here, you can't say, at least according to the opinion of the Rambam, who says that he wasn't a regular full Nazir, as ein Tata Manoach hat im Madrig ben Beneziris, that his father Manoach was Madrig ben Beneziris. That case, Varum. If that was the case, the Rambam sagt klar, Sharei loin Nodar ben Nazir. The Rambam sagt that he taka did not vow Nazir. Ela Malach ifrish ben Tumah. The Malach separated from Tumah. So how would he get the status of a Nazir Sheni Gomer? Nachmer. You see this actually in the pasuk. Das is muchach from the Sipur HaKosov. This is actually evident from the story in the pasuk itself. Früher hat der Malach gesagt that he never made him into a Nazir. The Malach never made him to a Nazir. It said früher hat der Malach gesagt zu Eishes Manoach, wie sie darf sich führen. First he told her conduct. Be careful. Don't drink wine and old wine. Don't eat anything tummy. And then she also tells him about the lad, the baby that will be born. Also about the lad. Also, there should be no on his head should not go over the blade, because he will be a nizilakim from the stomach. He's a nizilakim. What is going to be the status, the laws of this lad, and what he's going to do? He tells him all about how the wife of Manoach has to call her Tishmer, whatever I told her to card. But he didn't coordinate the negate Shimshon Lein, didn't tell him anything about Shimshon himself. So you see clearly in the pasuk itself that he didn't make him into a Nazir. He just said that he should stay away, told the mother to stay away from Tumah. But further, the Oid, if actually this had by Shimshon Shmuel, because of the halacha that a man can take his son and make him into a Nazir. So Manoach and Elkanah made their children to Naziris. He passed them to Zogan. So why does the Gemara say about those Nazir that you can be Madir your son a Nazir? Is halacha ben Nazir. This is halacha by Nazir. Halacha Moshe Sinai. We'll show that Rambam says English mark because of the remes that doesn't have any hint in the pasuk, and not that remes What do you mean that it's no remes for it? So there is a very clear story in the Nevi'im. The Rebbe is going to explain how this all works, beginning now with Oy Zayin.